So a lot of the times these auditions are about, what is the world we're building? What is the tone of the show? What is it that I do? Who am I as a person, and what sensibility do I bring to it? And then sort of marrying those two together with delicious acting. And that is really what's going to make the best audition.
All right, today I'm joined by casting director Cara Chute Rosenbaum. Cara, welcome to the show. Thank you
for having me.
How are you?
Oh, just another day in the upside down, just trying to get by, but I'm okay.
It's all good. We're all getting good at handstands, I guess, and walking backwards these days. How's it been for you, I guess? What are we, 8 months, 8 months? I don't know anymore.
Time. It's been weird. I mean, I think the same. Oh, that's gross. I think the same as anybody
that's staying
else.
in, by the way.
Yeah, good. Please don't edit that out.
I'm not going to.
I think, we're all surviving, not thriving, doing the best we can, trying to figure out what fulfills us and what we can do in this time. Obviously, like as time goes on, my thing right now is like, I've got nothing to look forward to. Like, I used to have like events or weddings or trips or like whatever. My birthday's tomorrow. I couldn't care less. Like, it's just this really weird time where I'm like, what are we working towards? And that sucks. That feels kind of bleak. And, but we're all just, again, trying to do the best we can. I also have a toddler running around, so it's just like not being able to
that's what you're working for then. Come on. Like,
totally. But like, we're very limited in what we can do and how we can celebrate anything. So it's just, we're all, again, doing the best we can.
I think it's like, I said it, I think I said a few shows back to one of the guests I had on. It feels very much like, in World War I, they told everybody the troops should be home by Christmas. Like, it feels a little bit like that. Like, yeah, it'll be over by the summer. Yeah, by fall. And I'm like, if you look at all these things historically, who knows? But normally they take a little longer than a week and a half. So mentally,
so just wait.
I
just got to get to election day here next week. And that has been to me like the marker that I've been like inching towards. And then I think that's just going to affect my whole mood for the.
Wait, hold on. There's an election happening?
Oh yeah. Have you not heard? There's an election.
Well, what we used to call elections, I think this is some new thing.
It's a loose term.
This new thing. This Russian playground of voting that we're in. It's gonna be. I think it's just get to it and like rip the Band-Aid off now. Like the suspense and anticipation is almost worse.
Yeah.
In many ways, brutal. Like let's just know what we're dealing with.
Well, we're not going to know either. That's the problem, right? Like I think it's very unlikely we're going to know on Tuesday what is in store for us, and it's going to take time and it's going to be messy, and that's living in this limbo. It's just continuing to live in this limbo. So
yeah,
we're starting off great here.
We're starting off so great, but I'm going to rebrand this as just like the mental health and mindset podcast and how to handle a pandemic.
Everybody needs it right now, any Headspace app, any kind of thing that you can take.
Anything that we can take. Yeah, let's kind of get into why people who will be tuning in are actually tuning in, which is acting and casting and all this stuff. And like, what can we actually be doing, and what kind of insights we can maybe get from all of your, amazing experience. But before we dive into that part, I like to start with, I guess, the origin story, that kind of superhero, catalyst for you into getting into casting. What was that for you? I saw from doing a little bit of digging, like quite a lot of your peers, there was a kind of performance in acting bug initially, and then you pivoted. But maybe you can talk a little bit about sort of what caused that pivot, that time, that transition for you, and how you knew that was the right shift, and then like how you got your foot in the door career industry wise.
Yeah, I really fell into this job, and I'm so thankful and so lucky that is what happened. So yeah, I started as an actor, as a dancer, and that was just sort of my upbringing. Actually, my main upbringing, like in dance, like I was gonna be a ballerina, and then that didn't happen, and then got into acting and was dancing and acting, and then went to college and continued acting and loved it. But the thing, I loved it as a hobby. I loved it as something that like really, I loved like working on a musical and like hanging out with my castmates and like the rehearsal process and all of that stuff. And as it comes time to like make real life decisions, was sort of like, where does this leave me? Like, I don't know that I'm built for this hustle, and you have to be built for this hustle. Like, you have to have a game plan and want it so badly, and it just really wasn't in me. And I had sort of decided I was going to become a dramaturg. That was like my big path. I was going to move home to New York, and like you'd find me in a library researching Shakespeare and like working on plays, and that was sort of what I thought I was going to do. I came out to Los Angeles after my undergrad through a grad school program that offered internships in the entertainment industry. And it was sort of like, come for a semester, have these bomb internships, kind of see what you make of the process of the people. And I was like, yeah, I'll go out to LA for 3 months. It sounds nice. And then I'll come home. And my first internship was at Criminal Minds in the casting office with Scott David and April Webster. And I was like, what? This is magical. What is this? Because casting isn't taught. Nobody tells you about this as a career choice. And when you are in it, when you're in school, when you're in a bachelor BFA program or any theater training, you're auditioning for the director of the show or the director of your department. You're never dealing with a casting director. They teach you about auditioning, but they don't teach you really about the muscle and the casting director and the process, especially in the TV and film world. And I was just amazed and hooked. And I really took to it. And at the time, Erica Silverman, not now Bream, but back then Erica Silverman was the associate there. And she really was intent on getting her claws hooked into me and getting me to do this. And so a couple months later, when a project came up and they needed to hire an assistant, I got a phone call and Erica was like, come do this. You're good at this. You can do this. And I was like, all right. So I've been doing it ever since.
Careful, she's gonna poach you to go southeast and go regional with her at some
She
point.
might. She's making a good case.
She could
for
do it. I had her on a few weeks ago. She's awesome. It was really interesting to talk to her about her journey too, and kind of that transition she's made from major market. And I use the air quotes there just because, to her point, it's like, what does that mean anymore in the world that we're in? Early days, I guess, for you with this kind of shift with the pandemic and Zoom and auditioning, but have you noticed any sort of palpable shifts at all? Anything that's really new that you can speak to?
I mean, the tech is new, right? Like the doing callbacks on Zoom is new, and it's clunky and it's awkward and it's a lot of, sorry, I didn't, you're on mute. Like there are just a lot of hiccups in it. It's intensely frustrating on everybody's end when you're in the middle of talking to someone and your dog barks or your child screams or your neighbors upstairs decide to like rearrange furniture, and everybody just becomes self-conscious and feels like, I'm failing at this. Like, it's just a whole different kind of ball games of distractions that actors haven't had to deal with before. Usually you go into an office and you can hear all the auditions through the walls, but you're like prepared for that. Like, it's a different way of operating, and it's weird. But I think self-taping is here to stay. I don't think even if we ever go back into offices and there's a vaccine, I think we're finding that we can do a lot more, a lot faster, a lot more range with the self-tapes. But it blows, because my favorite part of this job is being in the room. My favorite part of this job.
I was just gonna ask, how do you feel about that? Like,
I love being in the room. I love working with actors. I love giving notes and getting energies and adjustments. And sometimes there's stuff that you get in the room that you just don't get on the tape. And that's why it's so important to figure out your self-tape setup and your self-tape muscle. And Erica and I actually teach a class about this, like just about self-taping and kind of how to go through it and how to kind of be your best self on it and be a 3-dimensional actor in this 2-dimensional platform. But it's weird, and we're all everybody's trying different things. We're all swapping stories about what's working. We're all trying different tech. I think the tech is going to evolve as fast and as much as it can too. Like, we're all just trying to keep up at this point. So, it's a grand experiment right now. And I think the point is that we're all trying to make it work, and we're trying to experiment, and we're committed to making it work. And you gotta leave a lot of room for error at this point, because that's just what we're working with.
But it's giving us something, and it's giving us, I'm not going to say a foot in the game, but like maybe a pinky toe to let us keep working and get stuff going. And there's pros and cons, I guess, like anything. I had Seth Kasky on a few weeks ago, who's awesome, and he was talking about he made a really interesting point that I hadn't thought about, that when we audition for screen and TV and film work, we are basically emoting through the medium of a screen to get someone on the other side of it to have some kind of emotional reaction. That's not the same maybe as when we're in the room, but actually if we see Zoom or a self-tape as that dry run of what you're trying to communicate if you were on set,
Yeah.
it's actually kind of got, in some ways, pros to it.
Yeah. Well, and we've been doing this for, I mean, to our creative teams, our producers, our directors, our network, our studio, they've been doing self-tape for a while because they're not in the room
Sure,
anymore, and they haven't
sure.
been in the room for years. Like for years, I would say the past 7-ish years maybe. Like when you go in for an audition, it's just me, you, and a camera, and we work it out, and I choose the best takes, and I'm the person that's sort of sending those off. And so they've been used to sort of this format. For them, not a whole lot has changed, except they can't physically get in the room with you or have a callback or have a work session. And it makes this pilot process a lot more convoluted, because especially like when we're going through testing and working with actors and trying to
Mm.
get the best takes of them, like it's like how do we do that? But you're right, like in a sense, and Seth is right, like in a sense, we're trying to do this anyway. You're trying to convey something over this medium anyway, and so this is sort of the ultimate test of, can you do that? Are you built to do that? And so part of that is understanding, what it is, the world you're auditioning for, the type of person you are, what you bring to it. All of those audition skills still apply. It's just a really different format than we're all used to. And also the problem of just sending it into a void and being like, was that good? I don't know, I'm never going to hear back.
Sure,
Instead
yeah,
of having a live person in front of you being like, that was great. Like, let's make this small adjustment, and something to feed off of, which for an actor is
everything,
huge, right? It's
everything,
everything.
yeah.
So not having that immediate feedback, I'm finding is the biggest frustration on the actor's end. And we're seeing a lot more actors reaching out for coaching, reaching out for just some sort of like validation that what they're doing and what they're putting and the time they're putting into their tapes is worth it and working. Because, and now we're seeing so many tapes that it's just sort of like, you might not ever hear again about anything until you book a job, and then it's like,
Sure.
I don't know.
Which is, to your point, yeah, it's tough if you just get the breakdown and your sides and hopefully the whole script, but obviously that's project by project. It's not really going to happen all the time. What do you then say to an actor when it comes to preparing for that then? So self-tape comes in, I got, however much time to do it. I've got very little info to work with, and I don't have that casting person who I would have had in the room to say, cool, show me your first take, show me your interpretation, and then we'll readjust. Do you just let them do their thing and send it? And then if you want to adjust, go back for a second tape? Is that the way at the moment? Or can they do something before with tape one to do more digging?
So the thing is that what you send in really has to be close to perfect, because now we're seeing so many tapes that if you don't get it right, there's a great chance that somebody else did. And so if we see something that's like really truly close and we're like, oh, I just want to switch this one thing, we will probably have the time to reach out to you. But if it's like just way off, then there are probably a gang of other tapes that got it right, and we're just not going to pay attention to yours. And that's the problem, right?
Sure.
So you really need to use your script analysis brain when you're looking at these sides. And a lot of these sides, scripts are not going to be available, I think, even more now, because this is such a dangerous gateway of information, of losing track of what's out there, of losing track of your scripts, of your sides, of who's doing what. And so it's really hard. It's really hard to know kind of where to begin. You have to do a lot of research. You have to, and if you don't understand what you're reading, or it's a pilot and there's sort of nothing to go off of, you need to Google. You need to Google the hell out of it. You need to look up the showrunner. You need to look up the line producer. You need to look up the creator. You need to look up the directors, the executive producers, the network. All of that is going to inform what the world is that we're building. It's going to show you some semblance of the tone of the show. You're going to find deadline articles. Deadline's going to be your best friend about what it is that we're doing, so that you know what world you're walking into. Because if you don't understand the world you're walking into, there's no way you can tailor your performance to be something that we're looking for. So a lot of the times these auditions are about, what is the world we're building? What is the tone of the show? What is it that I do? Who am I as a person, and what sensibility do I bring to it? And then sort of marrying those two together with delicious acting. And that is really what's going to make the best audition constantly. We hear a lot of times too, actors are like, make bold choices, do nothing, like go crazy, just throw it away. And it's like, how do you balance all of that, right? It's just like, it's such conflicting information. And the answer really truly is, you have to sort of find the balance between. You have to find the balance of what you do, how you do it well, what you do that's authentic to you and doesn't feel like you're putting on a costume, and then presenting it in a way that tonally is going to feel like it belongs in our world. And then in terms of like sending, multiple takes and things like that, if you truly have two different takes of it that are like really different ideas or different intentions or different, feelings about it, send two, you know what I mean? Like, but make sure the one that you think is the most appropriate or tonally perfect is the first one we see, because otherwise we might not get to that other one.
And make sure they are actually different, not that you think
Yes.
it's different and actually you've just done a slightly lower level.
Yeah. Oh my, or you just taken like one extra beat in this one place for this one beat you want to hit. I don't want to watch two takes like that. Like, that's just, to me, like, you can't choose. And I get it. It's like a House Hunters episode, right? Like, no take is going to be perfect. It's which one checks the most boxes in the end, and that's the one you got to send in. But it's really, it's difficult, and I don't envy actors at all for having to like sit there and choose takes and be like, well, I said the in this take, but I said these in this take, and I don't know if they're gonna like hit me for that one. Like, it sucks.
But that's the work, and I think a lot of what you're talking about before that is preparation. And
Yeah.
my take on that is sort of two strands of that, right? There's the preparation of doing your homework on what you were saying about the tone of the show, the writing, anything you can find about what kind of world it is. But there's also that preparation that is a bit more, I guess, ethereal, which is like, who the hell are you as a person preparation.
Yeah.
And the more I've been talking to people, the more that, and just in my own personal journey, the more I see that acting training is essential. Of course, good training is essential, caveat that. But ultimately it's a life thing. It's a who are
Yeah.
you as an individual thing. And again, I don't know the nature or nurture answer to that question, but in your experience, because you've obviously met and seen a whole load more actors than I ever have and will, do you feel like there's a tangible thing there when you meet someone that you kind of just know they have their shit together, for lack of a better term? Or, and can you teach that as well? Like, how can someone get to that?
I don't think it's about having your shit together as a human, because let's face it, like, no, but we don't have our shit together. But
Sure.
I think it's about having a good handle on yourself and who you are, and being comfortable with that, and being comfortable with your flaws as well, because sometimes your flaws are what make you the most interesting, especially in an audition setting. And so holding on to that and knowing how you come across and how you present, and what's something that is vulnerable to you, something that looks vulnerable, and you might look angry on me, you know what I mean? And so knowing those differences too, knowing why you are the better you and why you're a better you than the person next to you, and how you interpret. So you can look at sides and you can say like, oh, they really want to be like vulnerable and weepy, and these sides, I think they want to cry, but like, I don't do that. Like, it's a bad vibe. So how do I translate then as me, what I do? What's my version of vulnerable or weepy? Is it a quiet, introspective thing? Like, sometimes that's more interesting, and sometimes it's not such a dead giveaway. But if you're twisting yourself into what you think we want to see and it doesn't feel authentic to you, it's not going to work. And it's not going, it's if you leave the house in a pair of pants that's 8 sizes too big, people are going to be like, your pants don't fit. So it's the same with acting. If you're trying to put on some kind of costume that doesn't look right, we're going to see it right away, because it's all about this, and it's not theater. It's not this big transformation, which is why we kind of love theater, because you can sort of be anything. TV film is so much more about who you are and how you present.
And ultimately, reading between the lines of that, to me, that sounds a lot like that's what make a choice kind of means,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like, as opposed to make a choice, I've got to do something, anything, I got to do something. It's more that introspective. Making a choice is in making a choice to allow yourself to be vulnerable to that material. And sometimes it'll resonate more than others, but it's still letting you sort of impart who you are onto the scene.
Totally. And I think sometimes make a bold choice gets translated as I got to do something crazy to stand
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
And that always translates poorly on the other side, right? Because you're doing something crazy to stand out that doesn't belong there.
Sure.
And your way of standing out is to make a choice that I'd be like, oh my God, I don't want to go near this person.
Sure.
That's not the response you want from the casting director.
Sure.
So it really is about the balance of figuring out what you bring to it and your sensibility. And again, like sometimes we don't even know what we're looking for until we see it, until we see a person do it. And we go, oh my God, that's so interesting. I never thought about it that way. Or that person just brought this different energy to it that was just so lovely and so them. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But you are the only one that can sort of figure that out.
Absolutely. And I think that takes the pressure off maybe in some ways because, kind of what you just said is sometimes you guys don't know what you're looking for, if not most of the time.
Yeah.
And it just shows up, or it seems like it just shows up, I guess. But it's that untangible kind of thing, right? Like you just sometimes click with material as an actor that you haven't clicked with before, and it's the right time and the right thing at the right place, and you can't manufacture that. I guess you just have to be prepared enough to be able to do your thing.
Yeah, and every role is different, every actor is different, every project is different. So, the main question I hear from actors is like, how do I book the job? And I'm like, well, which job? Like, what job are you focusing on? Because I can't tell you how to book all the jobs. I
Sure.
can't be like, oh, this is what you do, and then you get this job. Like everything is so specific and so different and so dependent on you and what you bring to it. So knowing that is how you can apply your best self. It's a job interview at the end of the day. And you go into a job interview. If you were interviewing for a job in tech, you wouldn't be like, but I'm really good at painting. Because you'd be like, cool, I don't know what to do with that, but I'm glad to know. And it's the same with acting. I think sometimes people come in for things, they're like, but I can do all these other things. And it's like, no, I'm just asking you to do this thing that's on the page right now. Like,
Sure.
can we do this and see what that's like? And so, being appropriate for that job and knowing how to audition and interview is a big part of that.
Do you feel like that's going to shift or has shifted again if we go back to the whole self-tape and online side of things, though? Because we don't even have that engagement or interaction with you, even those 5 minutes. How much is that important to you as well? Like, how much do you read off of the performance aside? How much do you read off of the person just in the
So
room?
much.
Yeah, right.
So much. And I don't have that anymore. Like, and honestly, to be frank, like I can't tell if someone's a dick usually off of self tape, right? Like I have 5 minutes in the room to be like, oh, this is not a person I want to put on a
Mm,
set. And that becomes a little bit more difficult when it's just self tape and I only have the performance, for better or worse, right? Because you should be judged on your work and your acting, and the best actor should get the job. But you also want to work with like-minded people who are a joy to work with and fun and engaged and present. And sometimes I have actors, and like, listen, there's a difference between having a bad day and being a rude person. But like, we always find out when like an actor's being an asshole to the assistant outside in the lobby. And we always found out when like somebody came in and like just sort of like was making excuses. And you can tell a little bit of that stuff off of a tape in terms of like who's prepared and who's not. But it's a little bit harder of a, is this a person I want to invite into my sandbox kind of a thing. And so figuring out ways to do that, like, and a lot of that is sort of why people are doing a lot of like Zoom live callbacks and things for roles, is just to talk to them for 5 minutes before they do the work to see like, do I like you as a person?
Well, and it reflects on you too, right? Because
Yes.
your part of the food chain isn't stopping at you. You then have to go to the producers, directors, networks, and you are vouching for those people. So ultimately, it's kind of your brand, for lack of a term, that's on the line a bit too, right? You gotta do due diligence.
Yeah,
Um,
totally. And you don't ever want to put anyone in a situation that's going to make anyone uncomfortable.
sure.
Because at the end of the day, you're trying to put together a team. So it's tough. And there have been actors before where they've come into my audition room and I just feel like I'm not going to put that person on
Wow.
there.
I mean, it kind of boggles the mind, but then obviously it's just seeing it from one vantage point. I have horses for courses. There's all kinds of people to
Yeah.
go make the world go around. So Zooms are for you mainly being used for callbacks so far, and Is it again more to have a conversation between you and the person, or the person and say production, or are you actually having people perform and read over Zoom with you as well?
The way I've been on a current project that I'm on, we've been doing is calling people back over Zoom and having a little chat, but also giving adjustments. So working the scene on Zoom and then sort of adjusting in between to see how they take adjustments and see what their response is and talk to them. Um, this project that I'm on right now, we've actually not been using Zoom to record though. What we've been doing is
Okay.
having the people record where they are with a reader where they are, and we sort of watch on Zoom and adjust them on Zoom
Uh,
because we find that the quality of the tape is much better than recording it off of Zoom. So like this is the other problem, right? Is like the tech is changing, the tech is clunky. There's a delay with your reader when you're doing it on Zoom. And so we tried to just eliminate some of that for the project I'm working on now. I know other people who've used EcoCast Live with like great success and it's all been fine and dandy and wonderful. But again, this is like, we're all still learning and experimenting at this point of sort of what works best.
sure.
You know, I have I'm the CSA right now is doing this really amazing program. It's called the BIPOC Alliance Mentorship Program, and I'm paired with a mentee who's absolutely wonderful, and she's been in casting for a while, and she's just like trying to get in the door with no success. And I've been talking to her because she's been casting independently, and she said she was recording a Zoom audition and for the first time, and she didn't pin the actor, and so all of the tapes that they got were just like different people floating in and out and they were unusable. And she was like, oh my God, like I can't believe I did that. And I was like, yeah, man, like it's all a lesson, right? Every time you'll never do it again, but you have to learn
Yeah, the
the
hard way.
lesson somehow because something you think is obvious or not, or you don't think about, and you're like, all right, yeah, I'm recording. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh no.
Sure.
So
Yeah, it's a new frontier, right? A little bit with
yeah.
all that stuff. It's fascinating that you sort of said how you get people to do it on their actual self-tape setup. Um, which does make sense because yes, the quality is going to be better. And do you get them, I guess, to try and line their webcam as much as possible up and zoomed into them so you so
Yep. We just tell them all like put your computer as close to your taping camera as possible so that we can see you and watch you. The perspective won't be perfect, but on the tape they send us later it will be perfect, but just so that we have like a clear view of them and can see them and look at what they're doing and then adjust them in between. And so far it's been working for us. But you know, I'm again, project to project, I'm sure it'll be different. Whatever I work on next will probably be a completely different way of
this
doing
is
something.
like, yeah, version 1. I think we have versions 2 and 3 and 4 to come of like
Oh yeah.
someone's going to invent something in some way that's going to just consolidate all of it in a way that feels a bit more seamless. It'll be like an app on a phone or something we haven't even thought about yet.
Totally. Totally. It's ever changing. And now that there is such a need for it to be changing, people are gonna do whatever they can to streamline it.
Sure.
So
And from the flip side for you, so obviously we're talking a lot about you and working with
yeah.
the actors right now. Has anything changed radically for you in terms of working with producers and the networks, and what's that kind of relationship looking like, if it's changed at
Um,
all?
it hasn't changed too much. It's just the Zoom fatigue is so real of just staring all day. And the, you know, clicking through tapes all day, like is a bummer to me right now. And you know, listen, I still get to work and watch great acting and do stuff, but I am missing the connection of this job for sure. Um, and it some days just feels like endless tape, just clicking through endless tape and making lists and just doing kind of all this clerical computer work that I'm like, oh,
Hmm.
when can I get up and like go into session and talk to people? So it's an adjustment for sure, but I'm listen, so lucky that I even am working right now and finding things that fulfill me and trying to stay relevant in this crazy world and do what I can because it is really tough. And aside from working, honestly, these classes that I mentioned that Erica and Bream and I teach together, who, you know, she's like my casting life partner. We call each other, we love each other so much. Really fulfills me because it feels like working with the actors again. It feels like being able to do my favorite parts of the job instead of just sort of the bullshit, you know, see the breakdown, watch the other show, do this, do that. It at least fulfills me in that way. So I'm scratching that itch a little bit, which is nice.
Because that is the part that a lot of casting people love it for, right? Like you said, and,
Yeah.
and especially when you come from that background of being a performer yourself, it's like that's your chance to play. And I mean, hell, you've probably worked on more projects and got to play roles that people would kill for, right? And the stories that must come from just doing that, it
Yeah.
scratches that itch in many ways.
Listen, I got to read with Sterling K. Brown on The People versus O.J. Simpson. Like, there's nothing cooler than that. There's a tape of me somewhere floating around in the test with him dancing. Like, it's bananas.
Amazing.
And like, I'm very lucky, and I love that part of it. It's so much fun to like to have gotten to do these cool things and to be on this side, because also I have no desire to be on the other side. And people ask me that too. They're like, "Don't you miss it?" And I'm like, "No."
Nope.
Like, and that's how you know I wasn't meant to do it, right? Because I don't miss it. I miss doing musicals with my friends and going out to the diner afterwards, like that, having that camaraderie and that experience. But like, I don't miss acting.
But you've got the
And
camaraderie with the casting office you work in, and that's your
totally.
tribe, and that's still creative. It's not like you pivoted from that to working as like a bank teller. It's like
Totally.
you're still within the right industry, so you get to
Yeah.
feed that energy in there.
And I think there's a nice community of us that really, I mean, we really love each other and support each other, and are happy for each other when they get projects and get shows, and coming up and doing things together. Like, it's and through this pandemic, actually, it's been really nice to connect with other casting directors and sort of have that camaraderie too, through the stuff that we've been doing with the casting director's cut, or through the stuff we would do with Erica. Like, there's a lot of it going around, and people trying to stay connected and share the love, man. That's all
It
we
is
got
the
right now.
silver lining of this crazy batshit time that at least the
Yeah.
community really early on as well just sort of opened up, and casting people were coming in and doing whatever they could do, one-to-ones, or going on things like We Audition, and trying
Yeah.
to connect with people, self-tape challenges, like
Yeah.
whatever they could. And I think from an actor side, it's been great to demystify things a little bit from the casting side, but also to feel like, to your point, there's a bit of access now that might not have been there before. And now I'm talking to this person as a person, as opposed to a gatekeeper who's trying to keep,
Right.
like all that stuff. And so um that might not continue in perpetuity, but I think it's been really important to see how big it is as an industry, but also how small it
Yeah.
is in terms of the connection.
Well, yeah, and it's also so subjective what we do on this end. Like,
Sure.
something that I respond to might be something else that somebody's like, "Oh God, I thought that was horrible." Like, and that is the point: is that there is no one answer and one way to do things, and we're all going to respond to and like different things. And so, having this access, like you're talking about, being able to see it for yourself of who's open and what people respond to and what people do, and what fills their cup, it's been really great. And I hope it continues and we all get busy again, but you know,
Let's all hope we get busy again,
yeah.
and theaters open and all of that stuff,
Oh God.
which doesn't seem likely at the moment, but
I am devastated.
fingers
I grew
crossed.
up in New York, in New Rochelle in Westchester County, and the Westchester Broadway Theater just closed its doors after 46 years. It is devastating to
Done. Like
me.
they've they
Done, done.
oh
They're
shit.
done. And I don't know how Broadway is going to bounce back whenever it bounces back. There's so many people out of work. We've gotten emails from agents and managers that have a lot of Broadway clients in New York saying, like, please, please, please keep our clients in mind, our theater clients, please keep them in mind. And it's devastating, because it's
Tough.
like everybody is just struggling, and people can't make a living doing their job. It's not just about the arts are closed. It's about people literally can't make a living. They can't do their jobs. They can't pay their rent. They can't put food on the table.
And it's the regional ones that are getting hit first. At least I know in the UK, a lot
Yeah.
of regional ones have had to close, or they're really, really struggling. And then the West End, I think they might be doing a few things going into Christmas, but like very controlled, like the pantomime
Are
seasons.
you guys shutting down again? Like, I've heard all kinds of reports of
Here
people are sick.
here is weird. They've got like this tiered system, and it's done localized for different cities and regions. And so there's rumor of they might try like this circuit breaker to do like a 2 or 3 week lockdown. But to be fair, most places are kind of in that anyway. Like London
Right.
and parts of the north, you can still go to a bar or a cafe up until 10 p.m. But the thing is, you can't go there to meet anyone who's not in your household or bubble. So you're not really going to go, because why the hell am I going to go to a bar or cafe unless it's like I'm not going to go and take the people I live with. I might, but
No,
You don't.
no.
It's a very weird thing where they're trying to give the perception that the economy is open and happening, but
Right.
actually,
But it's not. It's not.
but there's
Nothing's
so many
happening.
places that are like that. I spoke to my friend in Holland. They're in the middle of like a 15-day lock-in. I have family in Madrid. It's, hard lockdowns happening there.
Sorry, you hear my
What
dog
it
in the
is.
background screaming. This is the Zoom.
Saying,
I'm not.
saying, feed me, walk me, forget this
Yeah.
stuff that you're doing.
What are you doing?
I think it was also his cue to say that I've got someone in the waiting room. So
Oh, look at that. Thank you, Yogi.
that was perfect. Thank you, Yogi. I'm gonna bring in Simon and let him have a bit of a chat with you and
Great.
give you a break from me. Simon's in LA as well, as far as I'm aware. I think he is. Hey, Simon, let the tech catch up as audio connects, and you're on mute.
Hello.
How you doing, man?
Hi, good morning. I'm great, thanks. How are you both doing?
All good, man. I'm gonna shut up. I'm gonna let you have 5-10 minutes with Cara just to talk about whatever you want to talk about. And you are in LA, aren't you? I just said you
Yes.
are, so I got that right. Perfect.
Yes, I am in LA.
Awesome.
Are you? Sorry,
I'm
Ash,
in
are you?
LA. Ash is in the UK.
I'm in the UK. I'm in jolly old England.
Okay, there we go. Well, thank you for having me on, Ash, and really great to meet you both.
Pleasure, man.
Happy Wednesday to you. 1 week till the election. Pretty crazy time. Absolutely nuts. And Cara, thanks so much for giving the time to talk through stuff with us actors. I had loads of questions, then I went to your Instagram, and you've already answered them all on your.
Amazing.
So I'll just go now.
Okay, well, so nice meeting you.
You too. No, I thought. Well, I also wanted to say happy birthday. I know it's your birthday at some point in October. You'd done
tomorrow, actually, but thank you.
Oh, you're good, man.
birthday.
You're good.
Yeah,
Just
did
do
his
some research.
homework. This is what I'm talking about, doing your homework.
I'd never did my homework before, and then you said to do it, and I was like, right, I must do my homework.
Done.
No, I had some questions around show reels for you, if that's
Yeah.
okay, Karen. I know you're involved with the casting director's cut, which is fantastic. And yeah, so I've recently got some new footage, which I'm very excited about, and thinking about recutting my reel. But I noticed that you differentiate over here between speed reels and normal reels, and it's not something I guess we have really back in the UK, speed reels. And I wondered what the difference is. Well, obviously it's a shorter reel, but what kind of footage would you go for?
Honestly, it is just about the kind of footage that you have to show. And some people feel like they have so much that they want to condense it into these speed reels. Some people are like, no, I just want the demo reel. For us, it does not make a difference. I just want to look at the footage that is representative of you and whatever footage you have to show. And there's so many ways to do it, and so many different ways to do it. It gets so complicated because then it becomes a question of how should I do it? And my answer is always you should do it in the way that makes the most sense for you and for the footage that you have. And that is going to be different for every actor, depending on what you have to show for yourself. For me, I know that like people ask all the time, should I divide it by clip? Should I have the speed reel? Should I have the sizzle? Should I have the demo? For me, I think a really good way to do it, if you have the footage to support it, is a comedy reel and a drama reel, because then when I click on it, I know exactly what I'm getting. The problem I find with the clipping is that sometimes I will miss a really good clip because it's not a project I recognize. So if I'm going and I'm trying to look at demo material, there might be some great indie footage on there, but I don't recognize the name and I see, oh, there's a Grey's Anatomy click. I'm just gonna click on that one. But I actually might be missing the most appropriate footage for the project that I'm working on because I just don't recognize it. So that's the only danger I see with the clipping, but I know it like costs all different kinds of things to put things online and whatever you have. I've never looked at an actor and been like, oh, well, he has a speed reel and he has a demo reel, so I'm only going to watch the speed reel. It's just never happened. I'm going to always defer to the footage that you have. I'm probably going to click through it anyway. The only thing I don't want it to be is like a music video montage. I hate when I click on somebody's demo reel and it's like music and like it's images of you like and like you're talking, but I'm just hearing this Incubus song in the background. And it's like, what is the point of So use the footage you have, use the footage that is best to showcase you, however is most appropriate to showcase it, and don't worry about what anyone else is doing.
Okay. Yeah, there is a lot out there.
There's a lot.
Different
There's
advice.
100 different ways to do it, and because of that, everybody feels like they're doing it wrong because they're like, well, this person did it that way. Should I be doing it this way? Don't worry about it. It's about you and what you have to present.
Yeah. And what would you lead with? What sort of clip would you lead with?
I mean, I think it depends on the actor, right? So whatever you have to show for yourself, if there's a certain type of character you will constantly find yourself playing, for example, maybe lead with that, because that is something that you're going to be submitted for a lot. That's a light that I want to see you in. If there's something really you know, like really interesting, but it could be from a great student film, or it could be from a major motion, major studio film. It doesn't matter, as long as the footage is polished and lovely looking, and it's not like somebody recorded it on their iPhone of you on stage or something. But again, it just depends on what you have to show for yourself. What the reel does is it gives you a body, a presence, and a voice that your picture and resume doesn't have. So if I don't know you, all I've got to go off of is your picture and your credits. But the reel all of a sudden makes you three-dimensional. It gives you a voice. It shows me how you stand. It shows me how you engage. It shows me how you listen. And that's a big thing too, is sometimes I find that people cut the listening out of their demo reel and they just have the talking. So they're like, we'll be in a scene with a person and it'll just be their lines. We'll be missing the other end. And it's like, well, I don't even see how that person took in information or how they responded or how they reacted. And that is a huge part of acting. And we want to see all those complete parts that make you and make you interesting.
Yeah, for sure. And for us Brits that might have a mix of US and UK accents on our reel, being in America, do you think it's best to lead with the US accent clip, whether you might get someone switching off if it's just
I think if you switch on and off, it's fine. I think the majority of the time it's probably going to be a standard American that's requested. So having that stuff up front helps for sure, to see that you are capable and can do it, and that it's not hurting the ear. Because sometimes we'll be like listening, or I'll click on a demo of a Brit who the agent swears they have a perfect American accent, and there's no clip of them speaking in a standard American. And I'm like, can they speak in a standard American? So if you don't have something like that, a self-tape of you speaking in standard American, just so I can hear it. But I think it's important to have on there just because that's the stuff that comes through the pipeline. I always love hearing people's natural voices, and generally if I find out someone is from Australia or from the UK or whatever, I'll be like, oh, do it in your natural accent so I can hear it.
Just once.
But just like, I just want to hear it. But I also, it's because sometimes I want to hear you not thinking about speaking an American accent, and just see how that is interpreted in your acting, because sometimes when you're not thinking so hard about like your tongue and your teeth and your mouth and your lips and all these things, something different might happen. But generally speaking, yes, if we're casting American television, we usually are looking for a standard American accent. So definitely have that on there.
Okay, cool, thank you. And just length as well, like in terms of like, is there a length that's too long or an optimum length, or it doesn't really matter, depends on the actor? Or
it depends on the actor, it depends what you have. I wouldn't have a 10-minute reel on there at all, but the likelihood of a casting director actually sitting and watching your whole reel, even if it's 2 minutes long, is slim to none. Usually I click through, I watch a few seconds of a scene, and then I like speed up a little bit and find the next one, and I watch a few seconds of that one, and I maybe I'll go back and be like, oh, that scene was interesting, I'm gonna go back. So we're gonna flip through it anyway. I think everybody's like short and sweet, but I don't know what that means anymore. And again, that's because everybody has different amount of footage to show. I would just make sure that, if you've got great footage on there, just make sure it's not sort of the same type of scene over and over again, because that's the whole point of the reel, is to show different colors and different layers to who you are. And so if it's just like 3 minutes of you playing different serial killers, I'm going to be like, okay, well, that was creepy and that's all that person can do. So showing the different colors that you can in just a appropriate amount of time, whatever that might be for you.
Great, thank you. And then just following on from that about headshots, because I saw something else which is just around the branding of headshots, which is something that seems to come up a lot, towards sort of actually going down to the level of actually really dressing for a particular very specific character, versus just having the headshot which just describes or portrays who you are. There seems to be this very two distinct schools of thought about it. What are your take on that?
My personal take is that you don't need to have a white lab coat to show me that you can play a doctor. I want a headshot to look like you. There are a lot of people that spend a lot of money on having all these different looks, And to me, it says that like we don't trust that anyone has any kind of imagination that actors can be, you know whether or not you can play a cop or a lawyer. I'm so much more concerned about a headshot that looks like the person. There's some life behind the eyes, and I can just sort of see them and when they walk into the room, I'm going to know who that person is. I see it a lot more with the women as being a problem, because a lot of the time people who identify as women like have the prettiest picture that has ever been taken of them on a day, and they're like, oh, that's my headshot, and then they walk in and I'm like, oh, you had your makeup and your hair and everything looks so nice in this picture, but that's not what you really look like day to day or when you're going to come into an audition. But I listen, there are a lot of agents and managers out there that'll tell you have to have your lawyer shot and your cop shot and your hooker shot and your whatever shot. You know how to spend your money appropriately. You know what you look like. For me, it might be helpful to some people to be like, oh, they have a stethoscope around that neck. That means they're a doctor. But I want to see the actor.
Yeah.
There's this like whole thing about branding that's happened in the past couple of years, and especially with social media, about like, what is your brand and what are you putting out there, and how are people seeing you? And it becomes really convoluted, I think, because people become obsessed with it and they lose track of the acting part of it and the training part of it, because they're so obsessed with what their social media presence is and how many different headshot looks they have. And it's like, but are you in acting class, and are you focused on the craft, and have you done the homework? There's a fine balance between the two. I think, again, for each person, it's sort of it's hard, because you kind of have to figure out what that balance is for yourself.
Right, got it. Thank you. And I just had one more question, if that's all right.
Yeah.
I noticed that amongst all of the sort of amazing sort of higher end projects like studio movies and incredible TV shows that you worked on, you also work on short films. So how do you go about working with those projects, and what sort of stands out to you in a short film script that would draw you to it as a casting director?
Honestly, a lot of the shorts that come to me is sort of through word of mouth. Like somebody knew somebody who I worked with on something and got my email address or saw something I worked on and sent it over to me. And so it's really, about the script, first of all, just something that I think is interesting and worth the time, and a story that I think needs to be told. And then again, about the people involved. Everybody wants to work with like-minded people and create something great. And if I get a script that I really think is remarkable, whether it's a studio project or just a quick short but really has something to say, I'm going to be interested in talking to the person behind it to see if it's something that we can connect on. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. I just had a really weird interview for an indie movie last week that left me really unsettled, and I was like, oh, this is not a match. But that's important too, right? It's about knowing who you can work with and how you want to work, and whether or not you would be a good fit to make this vision come to life and to sort of paint this picture with actors. So I do a lot of theater also, like, which really just fills my soul, and I just think it's important to do projects that make you feel good and also fulfill you in a way that sometimes maybe the studio projects aren't so creative. I feel like, even though they're wonderful and amazing, and I'm not mad at them at all, but there's something about getting back to basics with the work, because you're passionate about it and you love it, which I think is important.
And do you find a search for a short is different from say a studio movie?
Oh yeah, I mean, people don't generally, there's no money, right? So it's much harder to convince somebody to come and do a short, or they don't have financing, or they're just kind of guerrilla styling doing it. And a lot of these shorts nowadays, or these indies nowadays, are all falling apart because they don't have the money to be COVID compliant. So it's really difficult for them to kind of get up and running. So listen, it's always going to be more difficult to find people that want to sign on to do something for free or because they're passionate about it. But at the end of the day, like that's the gig, is trying to connect with those people, and the people end up with the role that need to.
For sure. Well, thank you so much for your time, Cara. It's really great to meet you. I love your hair, by the way. I was just thank
you.
Fantastic color.
Thank you. It was so nice to meet you, Simon. Thank you for thanks for doing your homework and looking me into it, looking me up and stuff. I appreciate that.
Of course. Well, happy birthday for tomorrow, and take care. Thanks both, and great to meet you, Ashley, as well.
Likewise, Simon.
All right. Cheers. Take care, guys.
Take care, buddy.
Bye. Stay safe.
Oh man, it's full of British charm.
I love it.
Full of
He's so
British
sweet.
charm.
I just
I'm like,
want to listen to Brits talk all day. He could literally read me the phone book. I'd be like,
I'll email him after if you want, and if you need someone to do like an audible kind of bedtime book for you or something,
give me my email, Simon.
he probably has it anyway. If he's researched everything else, I'm sure he's probably figured that out by now too. Someone did just come into the meeting room and then left. So
Oh no.
fair enough. I'll keep talking, and if they decide to join back, then I'll bring them in. One of the things you touched on with Simon there about the whole accents, and obviously loving people's accents that aren't American. When people don't have an American accent naturally, and they're meeting you and you don't know them, what's your take on what they should come in with and lead with when they come into the room? Because again, different people have different schools of thought, but do you have a preference of how you want them to be? Do you want them as the character in American and then drop into natural, or does it not matter?
So nobody's coming into the room anymore, but when they did come into the room,
When they did.
Back in the day when they did, I always think you should come in American, because I would like you to trick me. Because if you don't, I'm gonna start listening for it in my brain, being like, oh, can they do American? Or like, oh, that was vaguely not American. So I love it when somebody comes in American, does the scene, and then like when we're done, then slips back into their natural accent. And I go, oh my God, you fooled me. That's so great. I do want to hear what they naturally sound like and speak like. And so I think it's important to at least get that information. But if you can save it for the end, I think even better. And then when you do save it for the end, and it literally, so many people who have auditioned for me know, I'll be like, oh, you're Australian? Will you do it in your natural accent? I'd love to hear it that way too. Even if you did it perfectly American, I just like to hear it. Just again, because it might bring out something different in you to hear you do it naturally. But with self-tape, you don't really need to worry about that. You just do the scene in your American, and then I would say slate in your natural accent.
Sure.
And you should always put your slates at the end anyway, unless you've been told otherwise. You should start with your acting. That's why you're being hired. Nobody's being hired for their slate.
No, which is the thing that I think a lot of us find the hardest anyway. It's like all of a sudden slating is like, how do I stand? How do I turn? What do
also, the thing that I'm seeing, we need full body slates, which means we need to see just how your body looks, because I don't have you in the room to just see how your body looks. And everybody's doing this horrible, like pornographic pan down. And you feel terrible and awkward standing there being like, I'm being objectified. And I feel terrible and awkward watching this porn happen. And also, it doesn't tell me how your body looks. Now I'm just seeing pieces of your body in space. So it's like, just insert a photo, just insert a still photo of you. That does the same thing.
Okay.
Or turn your camera from this way to this way and just get as far back as you can. If it's not completely at your feet, that's okay.
But I think that's the thing, because a lot of times people don't have the space, or they can't quite get the shot, or they don't have anyone with them because we're reading online with each other.
Totally.
But the photo tip is actually a really great tip. Like,
take a photo, do your slate this way. Hi, I'm Cara Chute Rosenbaum. I'm 5'5" and I live in Los Angeles. And then cut to a still photo of you. Done. Boom. Sure. He doesn't, instead of this like,
yeah. Yeah. Although I do kind of like that, because it is awkward and everybody's feeling really awkward about it. But the photo makes total sense.
Yeah.
Are you finding that slates are evolving a little bit to have people talking a bit more beyond just like height and measurements, or you don't really care about that to compensate?
Slates are bookkeeping. It's total bookkeeping. We want to know how you pronounce your name, where you are in the world is an important part of the puzzle these days, because you might be LA based but quarantining in Chicago or something. So that's often a piece we need right now, and your height. And generally speaking, you can just record one slate, keep it on your computer with that information, and just attach that to every audition, unless they're asking for you for something specific that you need to give them in the slate, which they might. But you don't have to be in the same clothes that you audition in when you slate. You could just stick one slate onto all different auditions and be fine. People get so caught up with the slates and so nervous about the slates. I've never watched an audition and been like, acting was incredible, but that slate was a hot mess. We can't go.
Yeah. But in our mind, that's exactly what we're thinking. They're like, oh my God, they're going to judge. Like, did I say my name properly? Did I say my height in the right? Should I use metric? Like, oh, I don't know.
There's a great, Mike Hanford is a comedian, this Twitter video a while ago. It's somewhere in my Instagram highlights of him slating, and he's like, I'm 17 Snickers bars tall. Wait, what? Like, it's so funny. But like everybody gets so caught up in it. And I think now, because people are not in the room, they're thinking that they need to add these things of like, and a fun fact about me is, and I'm like, I don't care. This is bookkeeping. I literally just give me the information I need. Don't think anything else about it. Don't be in character. Think of it as bookkeeping. That's it. That's all it is.
I think that's a really, really good and healthy tip to get people out of their heads about it. I'm going to be remembering that next time for sure. Like, just forget height being in Snickers bars or any anecdotes about what I did last week or anything like that. Just get to it.
Bookkeeping.
You mentioned there a little bit about people who might not be in the same place as where you're casting or filming, which kind of is a loose segue for me onto the whole big old thing of visas, which is a super specialist topic, obviously. But for anyone non-American who needs an O1 or a green card, obviously there's a lot that goes into that. It's a very
hard to get them right now.
Well, now nothing's happening. Now it's all limbo. Now it's like, I know friends that have their application approved, but they can't get an embassy appointment. So it's like, but it was more around like, do you see and feel that the O1 still has value and worth, or do you feel like the green card should be what people are going for? Because it varies by network and studio. Like, what's your read?
The green card is going to be the blanket no issue throughout anything, right? So if you're to ensure that there is not going to be an issue, it's the green card. I think the O1 for people that are testing out the waters and trying to get their foot in the door and come over here, there's a lot of value still to the O1. But the problem is that casting, we don't control who accepts an O1 and who doesn't. Sure. And so I was on a project, I didn't even know that they didn't take O1 visas. Like, I was just like, oh yeah, this is this TV show, and like, we can see these actors. And we hired somebody with an O1 who got to set and all of a sudden was told they couldn't work. And we were like, what? So it's tricky and it's messy, and we are being a lot more specific and intentional about asking, and what you're allowed to ask and what you can't ask. But we can't even look at you if you don't at least have an O1.
Sure.
So, I get a lot of messages from actors all over the world, especially my Instagram. For some reason, I must be on a list in India somewhere, because I get so many Indian actors who are all lovely, but they're all like, how do I audition for you? And I'm like, do you have an O1 visa? And they're like, no. And I'm like, well, then I can't help you at all. Because I can't even look at somebody potentially who doesn't have any kind of paperwork, that doesn't service anything that I can do. I wouldn't ever be able to hire them. So at least having that helps me look at you for a project and consider you and remember you. But having nothing, obviously, it's just like, there's a plenty of people out here. There's not for want of actors out here.
Yeah, exactly. And does that, obviously that's definitely for co-stars and guest stars, no brainer. Does that even apply for like series regs? Have you ever kind of found that you've put the net out a little bit and gone for people who don't have an O1, but perhaps?
Yeah. So it depends on the studio, it depends on the network, and it depends on the time we have. Sometimes we are told, like, don't even look for somebody who doesn't have an O1. We don't have time to expedite a visa. And we go, okay. And sometimes it's like, yeah, if the perfect person was in London and came along, like, we could probably get it together and get them an O1. So like, let's do a search there. So it depends what we're looking for. It depends on the time constraints we have. If we're looking for something really truly specific and we need to widen our net a little bit more, and we'll figure that out as well after we do sort of a search and say, hey, we're not coming up with it. Can we expand? What do we have the time and the means and the money to be able to accomplish? So it's just a conversation that we have to have with our creative team. Some is just a non-starter, so it doesn't matter.
and I mean, the money always is a big one, but the time thing, I think, is one that we don't think about, because there's a difference as well for an actor who has the O1 in hand, signed, sealed, delivered, versus I have all of the stuff and I'm ready to file. So I guess for you guys, more than ever, it's like you got to check with the reps and everything right off the bat as to exactly where in the process is it. And really, unless it's sealed in the passport and there, it's probably a non-starter, I'm assuming.
Usually it's a non-starter. Sometimes, again, when you've got time, they'll say like, we can expedite this process and we'll pay to expedite this process. It's also very expensive to expedite, so the studio's got to have to eat that cost.
Yeah.
And so that is an issue as well. But you know, it just depends on the project, and
Sure.
and like you said, we just have to be very thorough when we talk and have conversations about who, and also who the O1 is through sometimes affects it. If you have an O1 through a specific production, sometimes you can only work for that network or that production, and the O1 doesn't translate to something else that we're working on. So sometimes we'll say like, oh, this person, or vice versa. Some productions only want a production specific O1 visa. Like I believe if you have an O1 visa through a Universal production, you can work on any Universal production, but if you have an O1 visa on anything else, you cannot work on a Universal production. So it's like some of them don't specifically translate across the board, and it's dumb. I don't know why. Like it's just the rules that these specific places put in place, and we have to abide by them.
Sure. Yeah, it's one that comes up a lot from lots of non-US actors, because there's always that intrigue of, how do I do it? Should I do it? When should I do it? Should I go there? And it's like, well, for right now, as in October 2020, it's kind of a moot point. And who knows what it'll all look like immigration wise moving forward anyway. It's all going to be Zoom movies and Zoom shows anyway, isn't it, Cara? I mean,
don't
that's
say that. Don't say that. Oh God.
No, hopefully not. Hopefully not. although there is going to be, I can see it. There will be an emergence or a boom of that kind of content, just because we'll need to fill the gap. I'm looking forward to the Big Short version of this time in our lives that comes out in 5 or 10 years. That kind of does the retrospective on it all.
Lord,
I don't think whoever was in the waiting room is coming back, so
they're lost.
Fair enough, they're lost. With that in mind, I'm kind of mindful of your time, so maybe just kind of wrap it up. And when I do, I always like to ask 10 questions at the end, just to kind of ask 10 questions quick fire, get your gut sort of feedback. And as all artists do, I've stolen these questions from James Lipton and Inside the Actor Studio.
Oh God.
Yep. So if you're happy to, let's do it.
Let's do it.
So the first question is, what is your favorite word?
Avuncular.
I'm not going to lie, that is the first time. What's your least favorite word?
Scrape.
Okay. What turns you on in a creative kind of way?
I think what turns me on in a creative kind of way is something with a message, something that makes people think or consider or change a point of view.
Yeah, it's always that thing that we think we have to spoon feed an audience, but they're actually a lot smarter than we think. And
and being spoon fed is boring, and I think something that just makes you interpret and think and go, oh my God, or just something not being what it was or on the surface, I just think is really exciting. And when something really makes you feel that emotional connection and consider something in that way, it's just very cool to me.
What turns you off, the flip of that question there?
People who are rude. Like, just don't be a dick.
Don't be
nice. Life's too short.
I'm sure that's a t-shirt, but if it's not, you should definitely make one.
Just don't be a dick. Like to me, it just takes such effort to like be rude to people or go out of your way to like be contrarian, and just like, you don't.
Life's too short, like you said as well.
Life's too short.
If we've not got perspective through the past 7 months, then I don't really know what we're gonna do. But
seriously,
next question. It is kind of optional because not everybody likes to curse, but I don't think that's a problem here. Nope. What's your favorite swear word?
Man, I'm a big fan of motherfucker. I think
strong.
That really
strong.
Really feel I have to be careful around my 2-year-old now because but I think that's where I'm going.
Strong. It definitely hits. It's a bit harder than fuck as well, because fuck is multi-use, but that's specific. You mean specific. And I mean, you must be a Scorpio, so you're definitely going to like cut. I'm going
for the jugular.
They're gonna bleed out and it's gonna hurt. The next question is, what's your favorite sound or noise?
Oh, my kid laughing. That's my favorite
Oh.
sound.
Best answer. Good answer. As I'm saying these questions, I see that now the waiting room does have someone in it, but I'm going to finish.
Oh,
I'll finish these
okay.
questions and then I'll bring her in. And then when she's
Okay.
done, I'll wrap it up with you at the end there. What's your least
Beautiful.
favorite sound or noise?
Oh,
Was that it? Was that it? That big
yeah,
exhale?
that was it. No. My least favorite sound or noise. I think just the nails on a chalkboard. Just, yeah.
Yeah. What job or profession other than your own or ones you've maybe done in the past would you most like to attempt?
I tell my husband all the time I missed my calling as a dermatologist
Okay.
because I love Dr. Pimple Popper.
Okay. This is a first. Okay. Bring it on. This is a first.
I don't have the brain for it, but like that kind of gross skin stuff, I'm always into, and it's just weird. But
your
yeah,
conversations with the dermatologist must be epic.
Weird.
They're like, give her a double session because she just asked questions.
Like, I have so many questions about what's happening.
So you don't have any of these conditions. No, it doesn't matter. Just generally tell me.
By the way, I don't have a science brain at all. Like my husband's a dentist. Like he has a science brain and a math brain, and I have like the creative arts brain. But like it's just so interesting to me.
I like you've got this perfect mix between you and your husband, but there's that little itch I think you need to scratch. Maybe, you know what, when the show comes along about like, I don't know, a dermatologist like if Dexter was a dermatologist, aren't they bringing Dexter back? Aren't they bringing it back? I'm sure I saw that.
Are they?
I might.
I don't know.
This could have been clickbait because apparently that happens. But
it does happen, but I don't know.
I saw
something. It
something.
wouldn't surprise me. It's a great show. It should come back.
As a dermatologist. What job or profession would you never want to attempt under any circumstance?
Honestly, probably a dentist.
I guess you have the inside scoop.
Yeah, I don't want to do that.
Fair enough.
I hate going to the dentist, and I married one, so I don't know.
Go figure.
I'm gonna go with that.
Go figure. Cool. I'll save the last question for after Elena comes in, and then we'll wrap it up with that. But let me bring her in. Otherwise, she's gonna think that we're totally ignoring her.
We just left her in there forever.
Hey, she's late. I know she is Spanish, and I get it. Spaniards always late, but still. Hello. You have your videos frozen? No, it's not frozen.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you guys doing?
All good. You kind of appeared earlier and then disappeared, so I wasn't sure if you were coming back. So I was kind of wrapping up, but I cut it short, and I'm gonna let you have a bit of time, and then I'll finish up with Cara. I'm gonna shut up. Meet Cara.
Thank you so much.
Hello.
Hi, Cara.
Hi, Lena.
I wanted to ask you, I don't know if you guys have covered this already, but what would be a dream job for you?
We haven't covered it.
We sort of covered it. A dream casting job for me, or I have never worked on like an HBO or a Showtime series. I would love to do that. I think one, the amount of cursing really appeals to me, and two, I think there's sort of a gritty, real quality that those shows bring that are so good, and I just haven't had the experience. So I would love to do like a dark comedy on HBO. That sounds really cool.
That sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah.
All the swearing in the room as well. That's what you want to get back to, like being in the room so you can read all of the sides.
Right.
Yeah, and just be like, just the
motherfucker,
just over and over again in an audition session. I love that.
That's a good difference between European and American TV when it comes to that, by the way.
Okay, you guys can swear and it's like fine. Us, we're so prude over here. We can't. We're like, oh, somebody said shit. It's just like ridiculous.
It's like whenever actors come on a UK or European talk show and they start realizing that other guests and like the interviewer is swearing, and like, wait,
you can say that?
We can say that here. Like I remember Mark Wahlberg on a show over here was like, you're letting us have alcohol on the air and now you're all swearing. Like, what is this? Like, this is the best show ever.
Yeah. God, just they let the animals out.
Absolutely, absolutely. On that show, I'm thinking about Wahlberg got really drunk. I mean,
Oh boy.
he was fucking hammered. It was great TV. It was fantastic TV. Elena, do you have any other questions, or was that it?
No, do you have, oh yeah, one more. Do you have a dream director that you'd love to work with?
Oh man, I listen. That's such a tough question because I can think of like 6 off the top of my head, and I'm just like that one. We talked about this earlier a little bit, but I just want to work on like-minded stuff with cool people making cool art, and however that comes to fruition, like I just want to be able to work. And so like, yeah, I would love to work with Sofia Coppola, and yeah, I would love to work with Quentin Tarantino, and like, yeah, I would love to work with people who are still working on their craft and coming up. So I just think anybody that's into making something cool and interesting, like I'm here for it.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
We
Thank you.
didn't touch on it, Cara. How do you go about like pitching for work like that? Do you, or does it kind of come to you aside from the short films?
Yeah. It's a grind. I actually I'm out on my own for the first 2020 was gonna be my year. I was like going out on my own and like doing my own thing instead of sort of working with casting directors that were getting the work. And it's tough. It's a big grind. A lot of it is like emailing studios networks and being like, hey, like I'm available. Here's my resume. I'd love to meet with you and like vibe with you. And taking meetings in general. And I was sort of doing that in the beginning of the year until the world turned upside down. And a lot of it's a hustle because a lot of it is relationships and loyalty and getting in the door with people. And I'm really lucky. I've got really great relationships with all the people that I have worked with, and they call. But it's sort of about getting in with new people too, and
Sure.
just really, really grinding and hustling. And it's a little exhausting, to be very honest, because sometimes you find yourself just not working and you're like, oh, how am I ever going to work again? Much like an actor, like you guys don't realize we struggle for jobs, and we look around and we're like, well, who's casting that? Or, oh, there's a new pilot coming out. I should throw my hat in the ring for that. How do I get in touch with this producer or this studio and say like, put me on the list? Or like, I was supposed to meet on a pilot earlier this year, and an hour before I was supposed to walk out the door, they called me and said that they had gone with another casting director before they even met me. Like stuff like that happens on our end the same way it happens on the actor's end. So it is a grind, but this is
what we've chosen.
This is what we've chosen.
To be fair, the regular jobs don't seem that stable anymore anyway. So
no,
yay.
Nothing. We're living in the upside down.
Absolutely. Awesome. Any more questions, Elena, or was that?
No, that's it. Thank you so much.
Awesome.
Thank you, Elena.
Thanks for coming on. I'm glad we waited. I'm glad that also, Cara, you took your time to talk about your dermatology things. So it gave us time to bring Elena on. Awesome, Elena. Thanks for joining.
Thanks. Bye.
See you later.
Bye.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about just that at the end there, how you pitch for work, because I think it's not something we think about or hear about. But like you said, you're freelance too, just like the rest of us. So we're all, someone somewhere is pitching for a job always, no matter what kind of part of the industry we're in. There's always that kind of hustle going on.
And we take meetings also, like I mentioned before, like we take meetings to make sure it would be a good fit, that we could be on the same page, that we can be open and have an open dialogue with the creative, with the producer, with the director. I had this meeting last week with this guy who was an actor, was directing this indie, sent the script, really lovely script, excited to chat with him. And it just became so clear he, one, never worked with a casting director before, but two, he was just insulting and asked me to basically leave the meeting and go make a list of actors I wanted and do a search for this specific role, and then come back to him with that list of actors to see if he wanted to give me the job or not. And I was like, well, no, that's the job you'd be hiring me for. I'm not gonna do that. And he was so appalled that I said no. He was so appalled that I said no. He was so insulted, and it just went downhill very quickly. So that's the other thing too, is choosing to work with people where life's too short.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Okay, I lied. I'm going to do a Columbo. I have one more question, but it is kind of off the back of what you just said. So when you are looking to work with someone and collaborate with a director in this case, and they don't quite understand the process, how do you help them collaborate with you and not dictate to you? Because the job of a director is to see over everything, but it's not to control everything ideally. Like, how do you get to share your vision so that you're creating and not just doing admin?
Yeah. So a lot of it is having conversations ahead of time. And a lot of the directors that I have worked with in the past have been very open of, I've never actually worked with a casting director before. I'm really excited to, how does this process work? And so, I'm happy to explain and to sort of walk through the process with somebody who is open to learning and open to experience and open to input. You can tell when somebody is open to that creatively and when someone is not. And so there are certain people that are like, well, I just want this and that, and I just, want you to do this. And it's sort of like, well, that's we some people you to be want creative. I'm always people who have camaraderie and exactly how it goes and how to do it. And so that is something that, we just have to have a conversation up front about how the process works.
Yeah, totally. It kind of cut off a little bit for me there, but I think I got most of that. I got most of
Okay.
that. But it is about having those conversations and collaborating with people and knowing that you can vibe with them and that they're willing to hear your input, I guess, as well, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's key.
They're willing to hear your input and they're willing to understand what your process is. And if they're not willing to understand your process or the process in general, probably not somebody you want to work with in all things, in anything in life.
Totally.
So, plenty of directors and producers who are trying to get on their feet and make indies and learning how to work with a casting director. And I'm happy to guide through that process if I can be helpful and I feel like it's a good match. If I don't feel like it's a good match, then
yeah,
not as helpful to carry somebody through.
And what are the key things for you that they bring to the table in terms of what you need materials wise? So once the boxes are ticked personality wise, obviously I'm assuming you need a script that's pretty much locked, or not maybe locked, but well along the process. Do you then need anything more from them in terms of like mood boards and lookbooks, or is that not that's not just the script?
No, I find that a lot of people send us that stuff anyway because they think it will help us, but honestly, we don't take a whole lot of it into consideration in terms of what we do because we are looking to paint our own picture with the actors, and so knowing what they're going for is great and knowing the tone of the piece is great, but sometimes being like locked into a lookbook, it doesn't feel like, we're not just reproducing something that they drew out.
Sure.
But people send decks and things all the time, and sometimes honestly that's more helpful when we're trying to pitch to an actor, because the actor understands how something looks or what the vision is. Like, that is helpful for them to want to sign on to some of these projects. But for us, we really start with a script and a director and that kind of vibe and go from there.
It always starts with the script, doesn't it? It really does. It's always like, what's the story and is it executed well on the page first and foremost, and then go from there. Cool. Let's get to that final question of the series of 10 that I didn't get to, and let's wrap this up so you can go and spend time with your kid and with your dog that needs a walk or a bit of feeding. The final question was, when it's all said and done, what would you like the story of your life to be? What kind of legacy do you want to leave behind?
Oh man.
I know. Just to throw that out there on a Wednesday.
Casual. I think I would want the legacy to be someone who was kind-hearted and helped others and stood for what was right in the world and making the world a better place for everyone.
Awesome. So you did have an answer. You kind of made it seem like you didn't have anything on the. You
had that. I was like, do we go like with a real deep answer, or do we be like chocolate? Or
Yeah, I want my legacy to be candy. Works for some. Awesome, Cara. It's been great chatting with you. I guess final moment to you, really, for anybody who wants to connect with you. What are the best ways of doing that? And then, if you could, like, maybe give a little closing comment to button this off in terms of what you feel is, you know, the through line of this chat and maybe the key takeaway for anyone listening and tuning in.
Yeah. So I'm on Instagram and Twitter at CCR Casting. There's a Facebook page for me somewhere in the universe, Cara Chute Rosenbaum Casting CSA. I have a website, ccrcasting.com. See that consistent branding? How
Yeah,
nice is that?
it's great.
I'm very open on social media to you guys. I'm there to answer questions. I do AMAs, I do little giveaways, I do all sorts of things. I also do private audition coaching and private coaching for actors. So find me. I'm around. I'm here for you. I want to set actors up for success. And that is sort of my takeaway from this whole thing, is that I think being an actor is hard, and there's so much that feels murky and feels uncertain. And what my biggest piece of doing this on my side is that I want you to feel comfortable, and I want you to have all the tools to be successful and to feel good about yourself and the work that you're doing, because at the end of the day, that's all you got, and that's all that matters. And we are all here for you as casting directors. We are here for you. I can only speak for myself, but I'm here for you, and I want you to be successful, and I want you to feel good about the work you're doing. So you know, we're all doing our best.